Thanks, Anthony. We'll stick to the schedule and take questions at the very end of the session because our next two speakers have told me that they need a little extra time. So we will allot them that time, but no more. We actually have two speakers for the next presentation. They are Grace Saw. Grace Saw is a recidivist attendee of the Academic Librarian. This is her third time, 3 out of 3. She is the former University Librarian at Bond University. That's not James Bond, actually. It's Bond University in the Gold Coast, and not the Gold Coast here. It's quite a different Gold Coast in Australia. She's been also an academic librarian and university librarian in many major academic libraries in Australia and in New Zealand. JoAnne, on the other hand, JoAnne Sparks, is the current university librarian at Macquarie University, which is in Sydney, not Canada, Sydney, Australia. She has worked in academic libraries in North America, the UK, and Australia now. So the title of their paper is Mapping the Future, Yin Yang Career Development Collaboration, and I think you'll agree with me that together they are the yin yang of academic librarians from Australia.
Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. It is indeed a great pleasure for JoAnne and I to be here. I'm especially glad to be back at my third Academic Librarians Conference here in Hong Kong. I think I can become one of your conference junkies now. We would like to thank Dr. Colin Story and the Conference Organizing Committee for this opportunity to share our collaborative project with you. I will run through the background of the project, the Career Path Project. We will then outline the yin yang of the collaboration. We will go through the career path, share some sample outputs, as well as tell you 3 future career stories. We will also share the lessons learned and look at the next stages of the project. Oops, can I just go back up? Okay. Just bear with me. I want to share with you a story which I think some of you can relate to. I came into librarianship via studies in law, political science, and history. When I became a librarian, I had no idea, absolutely no idea, where the next 30 years of my career would take me. However, I did develop my own 5- and 10-year career plans with key performance indicators. Typical uptight librarian, okay? Now imagine if I had access back then to a career pathing toolkit, how much easier it would have been for me to shape my career more purposefully. And perhaps I would have chosen a different career. I might have become a political analyst in an international think tank like in the UN. Now, let me ask you, have any of you ever wondered what you would be doing if you weren't doing what you are doing now? I hear laughter, so I assume you must have. Okay. Most of you are familiar with Australia. This is the map of Australia and the location of the 3 initial partners, University of Western Australia on your left, which has 25,000 students. On the right, Griffith University at the top with 45,000 students, Bond University with 4,000 students, Macquarie University, which is joining the partnership, has 35,000 students. The population of Australia is 23 million, and I'll come back to that. Now, in March 2012, 3 Australian universities decided to work together on a collaborative project. We each had converged service models where library and IT operational units reported to a central office, that is, information services. The models were not the same, but similar in terms of delivery and scope. We were on parallel paths. While our institutions' future may be structured differently, we face similar challenges in service paradigm, skills, roles, staffing structure, and human resources. This provided us with a logical basis for our 3 institutions to consider forming a partnership. Now, as I've indicated, our population in Australia is small compared to the land size. We rely to some extent on skilled migrant labor to strengthen and enhance our human resource capabilities. 4 out of our 5 most recent university librarian appointees in the last 15 months were individuals from non-naturalized Australians. We believe that in Hong Kong, until recently, you face similar senior personnel gaps in your local pool. Our 3 organizations had human resource challenges and needed to build our future workforce and develop succession planning strategies. We decided to work together and share the content of the developed toolkit. We strongly believe that this toolkit would lead to staff empowerment as they would have the knowledge and control of their own career destiny. Are you facing similar staffing challenges? What skills and competencies and which professional stream is most important for your organization? The theme of this conference is about collaboration. Collaboration connects and strengthens our efforts. Working together has certainly allowed us to cover more breadth and depth and achieve more than we would each have done alone. In initiating our project in March 2012, representatives from 3 of the universities met in Perth. We discussed how we were going to proceed. We discussed the goals, the objectives, the milestones. We identified who was going to be the project manager who has organizational development skills. We decided who else from each of these institutions would be involved. At least 1 person from each partner university must participate in all our meetings, whether it's a teleconference, a video conference, or a face-to-face activity. We also went through how decisions would be made. We identified specific project goals. We discussed responsibilities, level of resourcing required. We also looked at the governance and agreed that we were all equal partners. The project manager would chair and facilitate the meetings. We discussed having a written agreement, what we needed, what the terms were in those agreements. But however, in this case, we ended up not having a written agreement. We felt that our project is successful. The reasons for the success was that the three partners shared the same business ethics of trust, transparency, and truth. Essentially, we also adopted a business charter which helped map out what we wanted. We adopted, in a way, in looking back, the Chinese way of doing business, Guangxi, where we emphasized on trust and empathy and the balance between the conflicting interests of our own stakeholder groups. We each showed and shared the strong qualities of dependability, trustworthiness, respect, and moral obligation to uphold the standards of the business. So I'll now hand over to JoAnne, who will share with you the yang and yin of the project.
Ni hao ma. So we've looked at our project and organized the content around the idea of yang and yin. And the yang refers to the daytime, the masculine traits, the hard elements. And those aspects of the project we see as the time costs, content, process, and outcomes. So our project timeline, the dark color shows you what's actually occurred, and the gray color is what we think it would have taken us to do this project on our own. So we can confirm that we've saved both time and indirect and direct costs. What would have taken each of our organizations probably 3 to 5 years to create individually, we have completed in approximately 15 months together. The overall team that worked on this had 3 times the expertise, with senior managers from each institution contributing, which allowed us to achieve greater breadth and depth. Sticking to a consistent project management approach with defined milestones, excellent meeting management, clear tasks, and deadlines are all yang elements of the execution of the project. In terms of our outcomes, our collective effort allows for flexibility in the implementation and the ability to grow into the model on a local level. The content we have created empowers staff at all levels in our university libraries and can provide a clearer view of possible pathways from the middle out, from the bottom up, and from the top down. So now let me go to the yin part of our collaboration, which is about the shady side, the northern slope, the nighttime, the feminine aspects. We had some interesting elements here relating to individual organizations, or cooperation and logistics, and risk management. As it so happens, we had an all-female team of 10 individuals. In terms of the individual organizations, as Grace mentioned, we each had unique converged structures. But we needed, and we're on parallel paths, but we needed to be able to make local adjustments and to implement the career pathing tool flexibly. In terms of cooperation, each institution chose the right people to contribute to the effort. We needed to work across the 3 institutions with different cultures, different strategic directions, and our own unique pressures. And finally, risk management. With collaborative efforts, there is always the danger that the effort can be unbalanced. that one person or institution might do more or dominate the others, or that, on the other hand, they might not deliver enough or at all. The external project manager was really the key around this. She facilitated our meetings and kept the entire team focused. Another risk that we saw in the project is about predicting the future, right? What if we get it wrong? Working together and validating each other's ideas minimize that risk. We think that doing nothing at all is actually a much bigger problem. So now let me take you into some specifics around the career pathing tool. This picture gives you an idea of how it works. Our whole project is focused on the future. The idea is that it is around a tool to facilitate individual career discussions and planning at the individual level. The emphasis is on self-managed careers. It reinforces the organization's commitment to staff retention and development. It is not an organization chart, okay? There is a lot more detail in the paper. The way the toolkit works is at the top level, it's divided into 7 work streams. The toolkit was originally started at Griffith University for the IT function. It was then adopted by CUHK, which is the IT professional organization in Australia, and a future version that covered IT roles. The bold categories are the streams that we further developed and we think are most important in libraries, in university libraries. Now, we all have roles in each of these streams because in our converged universities, we all have IT roles. Okay. The next one is the exciting one. Okay. So at the very top stream, you have an overall summary and the roles and the pathways are defined. So this is the vendor relationship management. You can see that you can enter the stream at different points and you can even come in from the side. Now let me show you one particular role. This is the manager for vendor relationship management role. For each role, there is a general position overview or position description. The skills, knowledge, and experience required are laid out. The behavioral capabilities are laid out, the education, and then most importantly, how to get there, suggested development and training activities. To make this real, I want you to think about the future. After our toolkit is implemented at each of our universities, imagine 3 future stories of successful cases. So the first story is about Marvin. Marvin loves science and information and people, and he started working at the IT help desk while he was working on his science degree. In that job, he had an opportunity to work on a project about research data management, a startup project. His job was mainly logistics. So he was typing at the computer to organize training events for senior consultants to meet with academics about research data management, policy, guidelines, and good practice. His exposure to that activity made him decide he wanted to get an information management degree. He then, working with the toolkit, realized that his science degree was a big asset. So he stayed with the university for quite a long time, finished his science degree, then earned his information management degree, And now Marvin is on a short list for new openings as they are created in his university for a senior consultant role that will support research data management. Debbie started out as a copy cataloger and also a part-time music cataloger. She has gone on to become a metadata person, and here is her pathway. She reviewed her career potential with her line manager and realized that traditional cataloging was changing. She was already interested in music, and she came to understand that there was a problem about finding open source music scores. So she worked with her manager on a small project, first an environmental scan. So that project turned into a bigger project where she worked on a tool to help create a discovery layer for musical scores. So she was able to learn about creating schema and work with programmers to automate and harvest metadata. And now Debbie is the first person in her team to move into a new group called the Resource Discovery Group, where she will be a metadata analyst. So my last future story is about Andy. Andy started out managing e-resources, the e-journals, the e-books, the databases, and after a few years, Andy was getting a little bored. So Andy realized that things were changing in his university. Everyone was talking about the cloud. We've talked a little bit about the cloud early this morning. So in talking to his manager, working with the career pathing tool, Andy realized that he could move into this larger space of managing other kinds of vendors and services. And how did Andy do this? There was some on-the-job training. There was other skills development, including a short course on vendors, IT vendors, and Andy even did a course on a MOOC. So when the job was available, Andy applied and was successful. So now I'll turn it back to Grace.
Thank you, JoAnne. Our collaboration had elements which worked well and was successful, the Yang. However, there were also elements, as you would expect, areas where there would be improvements and where refinement could be made for greater success in the future collaboration. I'll briefly run through the lessons learned in the successful part in the Yang. There was commitment from the leadership. For any collaboration to succeed, there has to be commitment from the leadership, and there was certainly total commitment from the Tree University leadership. It was a supportive culture, largely, as I mentioned, not just the university librarians, but by also the senior leaders who invested a lot of their time in the project. The project manager certainly kept us on track. And it's very useful. We would certainly recommend, like in Anthony's case, to have a dedicated administrative person or a project manager. There was a sharing of expertise, and there was equitable workload sharing. Overall, it was a success as the three universities were separated by distance, the closest being 80 kilometers, and the furthest was over 4,300 kilometers. So we were separated by distance, we were separated by 3 different time zones during summer. We met on 2 occasions face-to-face, and yet we were able to be productive. We've got this document which is over 270 pages at the moment and still growing. Okay. Now the collaboration has, as I've mentioned, areas of refinement, the Yin. We feel now, in retrospect, we could probably involve more people because it was a huge workload on those who were participating in it, because there was a lot of writing. We rewrote all the position descriptions, as you can imagine. We could consider other information sharing tools, because even though we used Dropbox, there was still a lot, countless emails going back and forth. So we will be considering using something like Google Docs in future. We would have more robust templates at the beginning for consistency. We did have templates, but it was only probably midway through. So there was a fair bit of editing and deduplication that had to be done. We could use more of the technology, more video conferencing. And we found that even though it was very difficult physically as well as time-wise to organize face-to-face meetings, we will, as we proceed, have more face-to-face workshops, because we had a few one-day workshops and we achieved a tremendous amount in that one day. Okay. The next stage of our collaboration involves making the toolkit, as I'm sure you're all wondering, making it accessible and transparent. We aim to launch the project website within months to share the information about the toolkit. Now, as part of the ongoing viability of this collaboration, it is necessary for us to measure the relevance and effectiveness. There are some measures to consider. That is, the institutions that are participating, do they have the confidence to adopt and implement it? Another would be, is the end product applicable for institutions that were not part of the initial collaboration? And thirdly, is it suitable for any institution that would come on later on to just be part of the program, to join in and make a contribution? And at this stage, we know that we have been successful in all three areas. And as a matter of fact, Macquarie University will be not only planning to implement the toolkit, but they're also joining the collaboration. So in conclusion, we are indeed very excited about the future, the expanding professional skills, the evolving roles required by our sector and in our institutions. Our workforce planning will be better informed and infinitely more accurate. We will develop a more robust professional talent, ready, willing, and able to take on the future. I just want to show the last slide, which is just an acknowledgement for all the people who did all the hard work back home in Australia while JoAnne and I are in Hong Kong. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace and JoAnne.